We, the people of Kazakhstan, it's not a coincidence that the text of the country's constitution begins with these words. The basic law has become the main document where the young republic has lived by for 26 years. According to historians, about 8 million citizens were involved in the creation of the 1995 constitution. That's how many who took part in the general referendum, where a single question was asked of them: do you accept the new constitution? Over 90% of them gave an affirmative answer. The population of the republic, which had just gained independence at that time, wanted to live according to its own laws.
В моем понимании, я бы сразу сказал, что Конституция – это есть основной закон. Қазақша айтқанда ата заң.
From my understanding, the constitution is the basic law. In Kazakh, it's called ата заң. The law is the main standard of legal act. It has supreme legal force that applies to the entire territory of Kazakhstan. All laws that are adopted must comply with the constitution. The constitution is about the people. Every letter, every norm, every article, every comma and point carry the will of the people. No one has the right to interpret it or go beyond its framework.
Принял народ. То есть каждая буква, каждая норма, каждая статья, каждая буква, каждая запятая, точка, она в себе несет волю народа. И его толковать или выходить за рамки никто не имеет права.
Witnesses recalled that the first steps on the path to independence were the most difficult. Prior to building a new state, a strong foundation had to be built, which is the constitution. But the basic law wasn't immediately put into force. In the first year after independence, the country still lived by the old obsolete Soviet Union constitution. Kazakhstan then had just started creating its own basic law, which was amended 7 times.
Когда мы обрели независимость в 91 году, настала такая необходимость создать.
There was an urgent need to form our own constitution when we gained independence in 1991. The Supreme Council approved the previous version of the constitution, but there were many provisions taken from the Soviet period. There were also private legislations on which market relations are based upon, so the previous constitution wasn't clearly formulated.
И там частная собственность, на котором фактически базируются рыночные отношения, они не были четко сформулированы.
The working group was given a specific task to prepare the basics of the draft constitution. The document was to be submitted for discussion by a special commission. The debate that unfolded were tense. The Supreme Council representatives, who formed the majority of the commission, were in favor of retaining a significant part of the powers of the parliament. The presidential power was still new.
Мне было самое поручено, в то время я работал помощником, а потом советником, зампредседателя Конституционного суда.
I was part of the working group. I worked as an assistant and then as an advisor to the deputy chairman of the Constitutional Court. It was a very emotional moment when the constitution was passed by the Supreme Council in the building of the Supreme Council itself. It was the first constitution of independent Kazakhstan. The constitutional laws were supportive of a parliamentary republic. But many laws were challenged by the executive and legislative branch of the government. I think the legislative branch of the government wanted to have more power. A lot of things at that time didn't present an opportunity for sovereign Kazakhstan to develop and to focus on economic transformation. It was a challenge, if I may say so.
Она как бы хотела в этом плане превалировать. И очень многие вещи, которые были связаны, это, на мой взгляд, это не давало возможности в развитии суверенного Казахстана по пути рыночных преобразований. Рыночных преобразований. Это было тормозом своего рода, если можно так сказать.
But the uncertainty was worse. It slowed down the beginning of many reforms. And the first president realized that a compromise was needed. After many debates, a result was achieved, although the first constitution failed to answer many important questions. Adopted in January 1993, the first constitution was in force for 2 years, and as practice has shown, it was not suitable as a legal basis. However, a scandal broke out in the country at that time. The newspapers questioned the legitimacy of the elections of the Supreme Council deputies, which took place 1 year after the adoption of the Constitution. After the proceedings, the Constitutional Court decided that the method of counting votes was incorrect, and the parliament was dissolved. New elections were called, but the powers of the legislative body were transferred to the first president by the decision of the Constitutional Court. During this period, the new constitution was presented.
Инициатором новой Конституции явился сам наш Басты. Он же непосредственно был разработчиком одним из них. Он самолично изучил.
The creator of the new constitution was our first president. He was one of the creators of the law. He personally studied over 20 constitutions of different countries and wrote many notes with a pen. You can see the notes at the museum. A commission was created for constitutional reform. The commission issued the result of the constitution in 1995.
Выдала результат, Конституцию 95-го года.
В 95-м году, да, перед принятием новой Конституции проводил.
In 1995, a referendum was held before the adoption of the new constitution. In the 1990s, the public was highly involved in politics. People reacted to all the announcements and they actively voiced their opinions. 1995 was a difficult year. The economic situation in the mid-1990s was also very challenging. Constitution, when translated from Latin, means to organize, to equip. The basic law has existed among the Kazakhs since ancient times. Historian and ethnographer Jambil Artikbayev said that the attempts to create the first laws was under Alash Khan.
Законы появлялись еще в далекой древности, чуть ли не в эпоху палеолита, можно сказать.
The laws were introduced in ancient times, almost in the Paleolithic era. As you know, the Kazakh steppe is huge. It's the 9th largest in the world. 3 to 4 million people who own 30 to 40 million cattle can coexist. If there was no laws or customs and traditions, how could they all live together?
Ну как, если нет законов, нет каких-то урегулирующих таких обычаев, традиций и так далее. Это же анархия, полнейшая анархия.
Some researchers in the 19th century perceived Kazakhs as a society in a state of anarchy, but the ethnographer said that this is not true. In his opinion, the previous historians didn't conduct detailed studies of the everyday life of the Kazakhs and the culture, but people of the Great Steppe have always lived by their own laws. The bees, or the advisory body of the Khans, and Khans themselves were the creators of laws and justice.
Первые законы, положения, они связываются с именем легендарного хана Алаша Хана.
The first laws or regulations were associated with the name of legendary Khan, Alash Khan. What he said became a precedent taken seriously as the word of God. Certain laws were known even during the time of Oghuz Khan, who ruled the Great Steppe and created a legendary imperial state, Oghuz Khagan. His laws regarding children showed that even the little ones are protected.
Его заветы детям – это тоже своеобразные такие законодательные положения.
15th to 16th century Kazakh Khanate, a special legislative system that regulated the lives of people throughout its territory, existed even under the rule of Qasim Khan. He was the son of Janibek Khan and a famous reformer. The number of his subjects exceeded 1 million, and he had 300,000 soldiers in his army. The righteous path of Qasim Khan, so as the rule was called, is a guide to streamline people's lives based on traditions. The rule was created by Qasim Khan and it included 5 sections. The first was provisions on property, second, norms of criminal law, third was on military service, and fourth, specific embassy etiquette. The 5th section was devoted to intercommunal mutual assistance. The main focus was to elevate the role of bees or advisory council so as to show that the court and the judge are equal and fair.
Это надо было сделать. Почему? Потому что Золотая Орда развалилась. Первое время казахи тяготели всегда к западным регионам, Сарайши.
This had to be done because after the collapse of the Golden Horde, the Kazakhs initially moved towards the western regions, such as Sarayshik and Saraybatu. They had to decide on the location of the capital. Qasim Khan and his son Haq Nazar Khan moved the capital to the center of the state from the western regions to Ulitau, the central Kazakhstan. They built a mausoleum in honor of Alash Khan, who united all the Kazakhs. The entire genealogy of Kazakh clans goes back to Alash Khan. Kazakhs have a proverb, "Our father is Alash and the wooden yurt is our house." It was the foundation of the constitution that was created under Qasim Khan.
Кирпичик той конституции, которая была сделана при Қасым хане.
Another well-known law is the Treatise of the Primordial Path of Qasim Khan. It was a set of legal acts regulating all the spheres of the steppe people's life. Historians believe that it was based on the provisions of the Yasa of Genghis Khan, the strictest constitution in that time. Qasim Khan only made minor adjustments related to the tribal structure of the Kazakhs.
Дело в том, что излишняя централизация в казахском обществе тоже невозможна, поскольку
Excessive centralization in Kazakh society is also impossible, since each generic unit is an administrative territorial unit which has a certain autonomy. So it was difficult to compartmentalize everyone and make them follow one decimal system. The people became angry. The same thing was faced by Qasim Khan, and it was written in the poetry Njirao. So he balanced it by moving the power of the center and give freedom to communities, advisory council, local legislators, and local administrators. This was the minor changes that were made.
И дана больше свободы таким общинам, местным законодателям, местным администраторам. Вот такая своеобразная редакция тех норм.
Meanwhile, the next legislator that was identified by historians was Tauke Khan. The 7 sets of Kazakh customary law was introduced during his rule. It included a public council, which members are the famous council advisors who represented various Kazakh tribes.
Представители этих больших этнических групп, административно-территориальных единиц, они входили в ханский совет, жетжарга.
Representatives of these large ethnic groups or the territorial units were part of the Khan's council. They are called Jeti-Jargi, or the 7 legislators. The word jar came from the word stick, split, which means to tell the truth. When they give compliments while addressing the advisors, they say a black hair is cut exactly in the middle. This practice showed that the Kazakh advisors always seek justice.
Черная волосинка, она разрубает ровно посередине. То есть вот практика казахских биев, она всегда требовала справедливости.
As a rule, the verdicts of the steppe court were not contested. The administration of justice was at a high level. The laws were obeyed. Punishment for murder was the harshest. Usually the guilty were executed. However, they could remain alive with the consent of the deceased's family by compensating for the damage done based on a defined amount. The fine for injuries was 10 times less. Libel was also a crime that could be fined.
Скажем, цена человеческой жизни. Такого понятия у соседних государств ведь не было ни в Китае, ни в России.
For example, there was no concept of the price of human life in neighboring countries, not even in China or Russia. They didn't have a detailed law on the price of human life. It was quite high, 100 horses for a man and 50 horses for a woman. For each crime that affected the health of a person, for example, a broken finger, the fine is 20 sheep. If a person lost an eye, then the fine is a squirrel. Any bodily harm was specified in the laws, and each law was taken into account separately.
То половина хона и так далее. Буквально все. Если какой-то телесный вред, то оно все в положениях все это указывается. Каждый нюанс отдельно учитывается.
The last attempt to create a constitution based on traditional norms was made by the Alash Orda representatives in the beginning of the 20th century. They wanted to divide the state power into 3 branches, introduce general elections and create documents following the structure of European models. Based on the constitution, Alash, a national territorial autonomy, was a parliamentary republic and the prototype of a sovereign Kazakh state.
Ну, потом наступила вот эта Октябрьская революция.
And then came the October Revolution, the creation of Soviet Union, and we became part of it. Thanks to the Alashorda representatives, we became a republic, a state, but then came the repression. 9 sections, 98 articles. For over a quarter of a century, Kazakhstanis lived according to the Constitution of 1995. The list of the most frequently repeated terms in the text includes the Republic, the law, and the President. The last 2 words are used more than 150 times, whereas the words the Republic were used twice often. The French model of constitution was used as a foundation to create the basic law.
Что взяли за основу они? Прежде чем Конституцию принимать, да, они думали, а что же мы туда напишем?
What did they take as a basis? Before adopting the constitution, the council members thought about the laws. It's important to preserve the rights of the people living in the country. This is called civil rights, the right to freedom. Political rights, such as the right to vote, the right to be elected. There are also socio-economic rights, such as the right to education and work, as well as cultural rights. I have to say that our constitution covered the human rights laws in Section 1 and Section 2. These laws are 100% consistent with the international covenants on human rights.
Они 100% соответствуют международным пактам в области прав человека.
Ну вот мы сейчас находимся в небольшом музее.
Here we are in a small museum of the Constitutional Council. Here's the chairman of the Constitutional Court, the Constitutional Council. These are the people who were involved in the constitutional review.
Конституционного совета, те, кто стоял у истоков конституционного контроля.
Doctor of Sciences Alibek Demirbekov is a member of the Constitutional Council. He tells us who were involved in the council when it was established.
Это все выдающиеся юристы современного Казахстана.
These are all outstanding lawyers of modern Kazakhstan. Academician Marat Tajimuratovich, Yuri Alexeyevich Kim, chairman of the Central Election Commission, Khitrin Yuri Alexandrovich, Prosecutor General of Kazakhstan, and Igor Ivanovich, the Minister of Justice who worked in the presidential administration. The current chairman of the Constitutional Council is Mami Kairat Abdurazakovich, who twice became the chairman of the Constitutional Court and the Supreme Court, as well as the chairman of the Senate.
Мами Кайрат Абдуразакович, который дважды был председателем Конституционного, председателем Верховного суда, председателем Сената.
There are several shelves in the makeshift museum of the Constitutional Council. One contains memorable souvenirs presented by colleagues from abroad, while the other stores something that illustrates the work of the council.
Кстати, вот здесь как раз вот мы можем говорить о том, что в данном случае
In this case, you can see a historical document where the first president of Kazakhstan, who is a life member of the Constitutional Council, personally took part in the consideration of the appeal from Alatau District Court of Almaty. We reviewed it on January 21st, 2000. There was a question that arose on housing, and after full analysis of the consideration, it was decided that it didn't correspond to the Constitution. Therefore, it was declared as unconstitutional. Take a look. This is where you can see all the members of the council.
О жилищных отношениях, и там в целом при полном анализе и рассмотрении было признано, что это не соответствует Конституции. И оно было признано неконституционным.
1 month is given to consider each appeal. In exceptional cases, 10 days. The list of subjects or those who can appeal to the council is clearly regulated by the constitution. Among them are the president, speakers of both chambers of parliament, a fifth of deputies, and the head of government. The requirements of council members are also written in detail.
В первую очередь это может быть гражданин Республики Казахстан.
The main requirements are, firstly, it should be a citizen of Kazakhstan who has lived in the country for over 5 years and has a higher legal education. The person should also be 30 years old. We can say that a fairly young person who has reached the age of 30 can become a member of the Constitutional Council. But our practice shows that those who have more experience in law practice become the members of the Constitutional Council.
Который достиг возраста 30 лет. Но сама практика наша показывает, что членом Конституционного совета становятся уже люди более умудренные практикой.
Due to COVID-19, the meetings are held online, but the pandemic had little effect on the work of the Constitutional Council. It has overseen over 200 appeals in 26 years. Every 7th of the appeals is announced by heads of state, every 3rd from parliamentarians and courts representatives. Every 10th appeal is addressed by the Prime Minister. Everything is made in order following the Constitution.
И Конституция для меня – это норма, основная норма, по которой мы должны жить все.
For me, the Constitution is the basic law, according to which we should all live. We should know it and respect it. If everyone knows and respects the Constitution, many things would become clear. Sometimes we tend to complicate things, even though the law has stated everything, both the rights and obligations, very clearly.
Чересчур усложняем, хотя в законе все это написано. И права, и обязанности, и все.
Intellectual quizzes, dictation on legal literacy, flash mobs and mass celebrations. The date when Kazakhstanis voted for the new articles of the basic law in a referendum is forever etched in the festive calendar. Kazakhstan's Constitution Day has been celebrated every year on August 30th. It's understandable that living according to the law is the advantage of free people.